Thank you. Great to see so many of you in the room. Of course, welcome to people online as well. So I'm Maija Hovila, Chief Analytics Officer at KONE. So helping our organization to become more data-driven and really create value from the data that we have internally and externally. Well, let's start from this video.
每个城市都有自己的故事。
लेकिन ये बस एक कहानी नहीं है। हर मोड़ और हर क्लिक के बाद नए दौर शुरू होंगे। मैं उसका हिस्सा बनना चाहता हूं।
A world of opportunities where technology is increasing our ability to shape the future every day. And with a strong focus on sustainability, we want to lead the way in our industry by creating smart and sustainable urban environments. Our cities grow, infrastructure is transforming, everything becomes connected. That's why at KONE, we use the power of technology to create value-adding services for sustainable success with our customers.
On meistä kiinni, miten kaupungit kehittyvät.
We are curious. We collaborate. And together, we create the best people flow experience.
Podemos hacer que nuestras ciudades sean lugares más inteligentes y más sostenibles en los que vivir. Haga suyo ese propósito y no estará solo.
More than 60,000 KONE professionals serving 500,000 customers. Over 4 billion people living in urban areas. One mission: to improve the flow of urban life.
हम मिलकर दुनिया में बदलाव ला सकते हैं। ये है हमारी कहानी।
This is our story.
这是您的故事。
Yes, indeed. So KONE mission is to improve the flow of urban life. And today I'll give you some examples about some macro trends or insights that we can get from the data that we get from our equipment. And then some kind of micro insights or tell you about the solutions that we have that make the cities better places to live. So a bit about KONE. Most of you, or at least people who live in Finland, are probably familiar with KONE, but KONE is one of the global leaders in the elevator and escalator industry. And we are here basically to make the cities better places to live. We offer innovative and sustainable equipment, so elevators, escalators, and then we maintain them. And then when the time comes to modernize them, then we kind of modernize the aging equipment. This year we are 112 years old. Over 60,000 employees across the world are working at KONE. And a bit more than 500,000 customers we are serving. And last year our net sales were a little bit north of 10 billion euros. And since the 67 we've been listed in the Nasdaq Helsinki. But these are some abstract numbers, so let's look at what a typical day at KONE looks like. Here are some numbers. So we have 1.5 million units that we are servicing. Of course, not all of the equipment every day, but there are about 80,000 maintenance visits every single day. We are operating in over 60 countries, so pretty much across the globe. As I said, a bit more than 500,000 customers, and every day more than 700 orders come in. And in typical times, we move over 1 billion people every day. Of course, in the past 2 years, that number has been a little bit less as people have moved moved less, but it's coming back, and that's a staggering number. So every single day, more than 1 billion people utilize our equipment. And the data that we get from the equipment really helps us to also look at the macro trends. And of course, the past 2 years has really told an interesting story about what actually happened during the pandemic. So this is what we've been utilizing, looking at the elevator start data. So how much are people actually moving and how that tells about the human behavior in the past 2 years and the insights that we can get. So as you can see from the data, the blue line is the hotel sector that really took a hit early 2020. So drastic change, 80% decrease in the movement in the elevators. Slightly similar story in the retail sector. And then we see that the residential medical sector, so basically hospitals, took a little bit of a hit, but not as much as some of the other, like the hotel and the retail sector. And also office really dipped. And then the life has gonna come back a little bit before the next lockdown, so coming down again. And then if you look at what it is today, so residential sector at the top is really at higher level than it was pre-pandemic. So there's a lot of movement in the cities and in the equipment in the residential sector. Also the medical and the hotel sector are pretty much kind of recovered, and retail just about. But the office hasn't quite come back. So we all know that the hybrid work is here at least today. Let's see what it is in the future, because our data shows that we are still below what the office sector movements were before the pandemic. So this is some interesting data that kind of helps us to understand the macro trends. And then end of last year, we actually made this interesting data journalism or story with the Financial Times. You can find this if you Google next level cities and KONE, you can find the full story. But basically this was a story about exactly the pandemic. So what actually the pandemic taught us about the life in the cities. And there was, of course, our data, but then also some other data points that kind of were used to understand the life. In the UK, there was 100% increase the use of parks. So people really went into the parks to get some fresh air when there was the lockdown in 2020. Across the European cities, cycling increased by 50%. So people took on the cycling and jumped on the bikes. I certainly did it as well. Hopefully many of you as well. In London, the elevator use dropped by 80%, and in Toronto even more, 84%. So the cities really, the building life came into a halt, but people took on the parks and on the cycling. But that's about the kind of macro trends. And of course, a lot of this is, the city life is made better through technology. And that's really where we want to play as well. And of course, in my role, and utilizing data and the digital opportunities to provide a better urban life for people in the cities. And of course, digital platforms and data behind the digital platform or flowing through is enabling various solutions. So we have different types of solutions that we enable through our digital platform and through the data. So one is the customer's existing solutions, like the building management system. So how do we feed data into the existing building management systems and help the buildings to become more efficient, for example, and more manageable. And then help the building operations and the tenant operations to be very smooth. Then we have our KONE digital products. There's the KONE 24/7 Connected Services, which is a predictive maintenance offering. I'll have a bit more detail about that later. And then we have various flow solutions. So one is the KONE Office Flow, which helps people in the office move more smoothly. So the flow into the office, especially in the rush hours, to make sure that people move efficiently. And then we have KONE APIs, which are enabling a lot of the especially the third-party services that are, you can see on the right-hand side on the slide. So for example, the service robots, I also have an example about service robots. And many of you in Helsinki or in the capital area probably have seen the robots roaming the streets nowadays, but we also are enabling the service robots to roam in the buildings and communicate with the elevators. And there are lots of other third-party solutions that can be connected via the APIs to the elevators so that we can kind of create a better life in the cities and enable that as a platform, the elevator to be utilized for wider value-added service. So some concrete examples, what we have existing and how we actually create business value. So one is the 24/7 connected services, so predictive maintenance offering. So we are utilizing various parameters from the elevators to basically predict when the equipment or the elevator is going to have an issue, or it needs a service, or it needs to be prepared. This was first launched about 5 years ago, so 2017, because we've been developing it since, and we can see concrete business results from this service. And this is actually a value-added service, so customers are paying for the 24/7 service on top of the normal maintenance contract. But we've been able to decrease the call-outs by 30%. So kind of, when something happens and then you have to react, there's a call-out. Those have been reduced because from the data we can see predictively when things are going to happen. We've reduced entrapments by 40%. If anyone has ever been trapped in an elevator, it's a horrific experience. So definitely this is something that makes the experience for the users a lot better. And then there's been 65% increase in the proactive fault identification. So we can really see kind of proactively about the faults and identify them. Of course, the data is enabling us to have more transparency to what's happening in the equipment and the sustainability. So we can reduce the number of maintenance visits by looking at the data and seeing what's actually happening. And then, for example, the first fix rate, so we have the right spare parts because we can see what's actually happening with the equipment. So we don't have to first go and see what's happening and then come back and go with the spare parts, but that makes things also more sustainable. And of course, in big cities, the traffic is a big thing, so it helps us to be more efficient in the maintenance and provide better service for customers. And then customers are liking it, so NPI has increased, and we can see that the retention of our maintenance customers is also increasing with this service. So data and of course digital products really creating a tangible business value. So that's one example, and then another one is, of course, we are a people flow company. So we also utilize data to optimize the people flow with the elevators. So when you take an elevator, you probably don't even notice how on the background the flow is optimized. So trying to minimize the waiting times and increasingly in the future really provide the best experience. So if there are a single person who clearly is in a hurry and there's a group of people who are having a chat, probably the person in a hurry should be served the elevator first, because the other people their people flow might be better if they have the time to finish the chat, but the person in a hurry really wants to get to the destination the fastest way. So this is something that we are really working on, optimizing the people flow and the experience for people. Some other examples that we are also enabling on the platform. So the service robots, I have a video coming up especially about the hospitals, but the cleaning robots that can move in the buildings and communicate with the elevators. Of course, in urban environments, most of the buildings are built upwards, and if you have to go and carry the robot, it can't. Or if somebody has to go and push the buttons, then it's not as efficient. So really crucial that the robot can actually communicate with the elevator, call the elevator and then go to the right floor. Accessibility, a key thing. So how do we enable people who are blind or visually impaired to also communicate with the elevator? So there are apps that we are enabling that these people can be utilizing to move in the buildings. And then the kind of customer management, so in office buildings or in venues like these, or if there's multi-tenant, so how do you manage the visitors and make sure that they have access to the right floors and they can smoothly move within the building. So lots of really exciting business opportunities in the digital space, and I'm sure that we will see more of these where data is really kind of playing a crucial role, but it's not about the data, it's like the data working on the background and enabling a better experience and creating the kind of better value for the business. So starting from what actually the business is trying to do. I think previously there was also one of the learnings that you should start from the business question, what are we trying to do, and then work backwards about how does data support what we are trying to do. There is a podcast that we have called the Flow of Urban Life. It's available in Spotify, and there's one specific episode where the robot helpers are talked about. There's other episode as well. If you're interested, you can listen to that podcast. But let's finish off with the video example about the hospital robots.
The question is, what is really a hospital about, right? Is it about healthcare or logistics? If a hospital and the people are involved in doing logistics, then it's less efficient, and the time it could actually spend in healthcare is being taken by logistics. So that's where logistics for robots comes into place. If you look at a hospital, the pharmacies are located at the basement or ground floor, and the patient rooms are all located at third, fourth floor or much higher. If a robot could deliver a medicine from one point to another on the same floor, we could extend that capabilities across the whole hospital by the use of this connected API. When we partnered with KONE, in fact, it was the only company that allowed us to complete our end goal, which was to reach patient room without the need for multiple ad hoc transportations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maija. That was very interesting, very informative, and a nice peek into the future, too, about things we need to be ready for and prepared for. We're going to open up the floor. I believe we have time for very few questions. So if we have some here or online, we'll be happy to take them. And while we're waiting, I hope it would be all right if I could ask you a few questions.
Yes, of course.
Wonderful. First off, I wanted to ask you about what is the biggest advantage of transforming data into a real business driver? I know you touched on this, but if you could give us the very brief one.
I think it's the ability to learn really fast. So you have to get started and then you learn and then you improve. So I think that's, with the human experience, it takes a long time to see what's happening, but data, the speed and the ability to learn.
And on a human note, I understand, maybe you could share with our audience, you have had a very successful career as an athlete. The human to the technology, to the data. Would you share with the audience just briefly a little bit about your very successful background as an athlete?
Yes, I started off as an alpine skier when I was 17. I got to the Youth Olympics. But then at the time I had to decide whether I go into the athlete career or do something else. Decided to do something else, but then I think the sports kind of stuck with me, and then I got into running and triathlon, and then 2017 went to the Hawaii Ironman World Championships. And I also, I think 2007 won the Finnish National Championships for Ironman distance. So I think it's really part of me, and maybe this job and the free time comes together with the data. Of course, I have all kinds of meters that meter stuff from me, but I think it's still it's what be AI also sometimes it's called augmented intelligence. Of course, I know how I'm feeling, so I use the data to support and really. And sometimes it's actually great learnings about learning myself through the data, and then knowing how to really kind of maximize the performance or optimize it. Same as what we do at work. So trying to be as focused and as efficient as we can.
So a really good example of using data to build resilience, but also build the human ability to be stronger and more powerful and more successful. So very good. Do we have any questions from our audience? Or do I get to ask all the questions? I see. We have one here.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
We have a question from the virtual event.
Yes?
What or who is the key initiator for this work, what you have done with the data? Is it customers asking, or company owners, or maybe enthusiastic employees, or someone else?
Really bit of a mix, because I think the customers are really key. So being customer focused, trying to understand what the customers really value, what we can do. But often, as probably we've seen previously, maybe the customers don't always know what is out there, what is possible. And I think the kind of visionary leadership is really crucial to kind of see through, because things normally you don't start off with like, everything being a success and you know exactly where you're going, but you have to steer along the way and have the leadership who believes in the vision and, in that we are on the right path, even if there's obstacles on the way. And then of course, people in the company know the details and bring great ideas. We have this kind of idea flow things within the company as well, where we get a lot of great ideas about what we could be doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have another question over here.
Thank you, Maija. Really interesting and inspiring presentation about the future. You talked a lot about data, and now you brought in the learning as well. Do you have some good tips how you can actually facilitate people's learning from data?
Yeah, it's a big one. I think one thing is to make it available. And we do a lot of trainings. Last week we had this analytics and data week at KONE, where we had inspiring talks, and we also had a challenge that anybody in the company could take part on some data in Excel and try to predict the housing prices. So get people excited and trying things. And I think key thing is to maybe build things so that they are not scary. So a lot of people might be scared of kind of data, especially if they're not from a technical background. So making it available and then enabling people to also learn and support on the way. Hope that answers your question.
Great. Thank you. And do we have some further questions? Or do I get to ask mine?
Well, there is one more question.
Super.
It's from Twitter. So, has it been easy or difficult to explain the value of data harnessing before you got the first results? So how do you sell the project?
Yeah, it is difficult. You need those people who are visionary, who can actually kind of see what it looks like. And I think external examples from other companies do help in that. I don't think it's ever easy, because it kind of, for example, building a business case, what it will look like, it's quite difficult. So you have to somehow just jump in and find the people who believe in the vision, and then try to incrementally show the value, so that you show that this is the right direction, show some value, and then not do like, okay, let's wait for 3 years and then we bring some value, but incrementally trying to show that the value is there.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the human touch combined with data.
Yeah, I think we talk about AI a lot, but in many of the things in the organizations, there's a human in the loop in many of the things, and I think that shouldn't be forgotten. So there might be really good algorithms, but if it's a black box and people don't trust the results, then it's not very good use. So have to remember the human aspect as well, and the change that people have to go through in the journey.
Yeah, exactly. The constant adaptation and dealing with change. Thank you very much, Maija. This was very informative, and I think a lot of people got a lot of extra information too about how things work behind the scenes, because most of us are familiar with taking an elevator or an escalator and have a certain image of what KONE is.
Yes.
So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.